primary symptom of it is that people hesitate. They hesitate to introduce themselves to somebody. They hesitate to have a strong opinion. They hesitate to ask for feedback or give feedback or ask for a raise or ask for a better job or ask somebody to go out with them. They just hesitate. They stop themselves. And they're the ones preventing their happiness because they're trying to stay safe. And safe is not, sometimes the safest path is the most dangerous in real life. In the life there's very little real danger in life, but we process psychological danger the same way as physical danger.
Fred Joyal, it is a pleasure to welcome you to the Inner Entrepreneur Podcast.
Paul, it's great to be here. Looking forward to a meaningful conversation.
Well, let's hope so. We will certainly give it a shot. What I'm interested in is, as a starting point, is how does someone go from building $1 billion business to teaching people about boldness and confidence? What was that journey?
Yeah. So billion-dollar business, I like to clarify it. That's how much the business made in aggregate over the 27 years. It was an 8-figure business. We did almost $50 million a year for a fairly long run, but you add it up and it was over $1 billion.
Do you know what? I'm loving that because now I'm going to think the next time someone asks me about my business, which I've been in for about 40 years, I'm going to multiply it out.
You got to give them the total number because it's, because a lot of people have a successful business for 3 years and that's it. But
that was the thing.
So
how long were you in this business for?
I founded it and then was CEO for 27 years and then stayed on as the president for 3 years after we sold it.
And what exactly was the business?
It was a referral service for dentists. So it was an advertising business. We ran primarily television advertising, ran a live call center where people could call in and find a dentist. And we had dentists who paid us to participate in the program. And we had in-depth profiles on them. We were like Yelp and Google before they existed. We were, way more information than they could get anywhere else, including recommendations from people who had been to the dentist already. And it became a nationwide business. We started it in Los Angeles, but we spread all around the country over 7 years.
And so, this whole thing you've transitioned to now, which is writing and speaking about confidence and boldness, and we see your book, You Can't Miss It, big red, super bold up behind you. I'm just wondering, how did you transition into that? Because it's obviously completely different. And what was it about your experience in your career that led you to this?
I started out as a painful introvert growing up and in my early life into my 20s. And it was very frustrating to me. And I eventually just said, I have to figure out a way out of this. And I did. And what happened, the germ of this idea of teaching boldness was sparked by, I was talking to a large group of high school students, giving them, had been running my business for several years. So I had 10 life lessons that I had learned that I was teaching them. And one of them was boldness is a superpower. And I said, the sooner you learn to act with boldness, the more satisfying your life is going to be, the more you're going to get to your dreams. And they uniformly came up after me and said, yeah, that's great. How do we do that? Because all I care about is the opinions of everybody else I'm in school with and stuff like that. And I'm insecure. And I went like, I know who you are. And I said, I had to figure out how I did it. And then eventually I wrote this book because I had been doing lecturing for years on marketing. So I had plenty of stage time. But that's who I had become. I went from an introvert, from somebody who could meet anybody he wants, get on stage in front of 5,000 people, completely relaxed, not even break a sweat. And they wanted to know how that happened. And the first answer is gradually, but steadily. Because boldness, I learned that it was a developable skill. It was a learnable life skill, not a personality trait. It just looks like a personality trait because you see bold people and you think, well, they were born this way. And they just weren't inhibited out of it for the most part, whereas the rest of us were. Um, and also, and I saw there's a real confidence crisis going on. There's, especially in the younger generation, that, social media is having an impact on that. They're not learning a lot of great social skills as well. And they're, the self-esteem of these people is really challenging. They struggle to make eye contact, Gen Z at this point. Um, and they've had overprotective parents for the most part. So that doesn't, you build resilience by hard things happening to you, not by your parents taking care of them for you. Um, and so all of that sort of rolled into, I just became more and more passionate about helping people to become bolder. And so I started speaking on it. Then I wrote this book and got the book out there. And that's where a lot of my energy goes right now. I'm actually building a video course on it, primarily for salespeople, because boldness it makes a measurable difference in their career if they develop it. But nobody teaches them how. They teach them how, all of the techniques of sales and how to pitch and all that. But nobody says, well, how do I build more confidence, more boldness? It's like, this is how.
What I find really interesting there is only yesterday I recorded the episode that will come out before this. And I was speaking to a Dr. Coleman Noctor, and he's a clinical psychotherapist with like 3 decades of experience working with young adults. And so it's a depth of experience in dealing with their mental, emotional challenges. And the two things that he sees lots of is huge amount of anxiety in young people, but also what he's seeing in the last decade, particularly, and more so as the years go on, is this loneliness. So, and it's because, in his view, it's because our society has changed. That when we were young people, we were much more connected. We weren't sitting on the right path. So we were probably, I don't know where you grew up, but we were out on the street kicking football or hanging around with our mates. And so we learned this skill without realizing we were learning a skill. And one of the interesting things I took away from the conversation at the end of the podcast, because I was trying to bring it back to parents looking at their children who are suffering from anxiety or just don't know how to communicate and connect, and being very worried about it. But he simplified it in a way, it's very similar to what you're saying. He was saying it's just a skill they haven't learned. And so they have defined themselves as this inability to connect and bond with other kids of their own. He said they literally don't know how to walk and start a conversation. He said, and the parents are all worried about this. He said, but it's a learnable skill. And we don't realize it's a learnable skill because as we were growing up, we just learned it, so we didn't acknowledge that it was a skill. And
Yeah.
it sounds to me like you're saying something very similar, that and I, by the way, I do class myself as an introvert, so we're going to have that conversation in a minute. But but it's interesting when people see themselves as whatever the opposite of a lack, whatever the lack of boldness is a lack of confidence. And what you're saying, they're describing it as a personality trait, and you're going, no, you haven't learned the skill, you haven't built the muscle.
Yes, you haven't built your boldness muscle. And so your comfort zone is fairly tiny,
Yeah.
and you stay in it because it makes you anxious to go out of it, and you don't want to be uncomfortable. And and the part of another part of it is there's this real, uh, you know, a friend of mine, Jill Schulman, calls it the comfort trap. Is like the pursuit of comfort as an end into itself, whereas all the growth happens when you're uncomfortable. Whether it's in, and I always use the athleticism as and exercising as the analogy, because that's how you get stronger. You get stronger by being uncomfortable. If you had a comfortable workout, you didn't work out.
Yeah.
So so we deliberately do that when we're exercising. But as you say, what socialization's not really taught. And we learned it because we grew up, we had to deal with bullies. We had to deal with people who didn't want to be friends with us, people, friends who didn't become friends, who abandoned us. All of that stuff happened without our parents hovering over us trying to fix it. And some of us got stronger from it. Most of us got stronger. Sometimes it took longer. And and this that teenage years where you it's almost like hormonally you worry about what everybody thinks. There's like that you're shaping your opinion of yourself by everybody else, instead of those rare people that shape it by who they want to become themselves. So, but I'm a recovering introvert myself. That's what I call it. Is like, yeah, the difference is when I'm alone, it's by choice. I am not ever lonely. If I'm feel like, geez, I would like to meet some people, I will go somewhere and meet some people and probably have an in-depth conversation, maybe with a complete stranger. Um, and that's makes all the difference, because we are social animals. And if you deprive yourself of social connection, you will become psychologically unhealthy. And I see a lot of that. And I want to help people out of that wherever they are. People are getting married much later. People are getting divorced later in life and then can't find somebody to be with. And, they are stuck being alone. And of course, we've got video games, we got social media gives us dopamine like crazy, but it's got nothing to do with human connection. Although I have young friends of mine who they get online and they play video games with their best friends. And so half of it is interacting with them, which is very different because they stay connected to each other and they're having social interaction. They're smack talking each other, and they're, and catching up with each other and stuff. And they're staying connected. Um, but like I said, there's a confidence crisis that has been coming up, and now I think it's become extreme in the youngest two generations. But there's also plenty of people along the way who are lonely and and anxious and depressed and all of that. We're along with that is a mental health crisis, I think, worldwide. There's way more depression. There's way more suicide, and the suicide rate under young people is frightening.
I think you, I think you mentioned about are young people who are so wrapped up in what other people think of them. But it strikes me that a lot of adults I know are the exact same. No, maybe they've learned to socialize better. Maybe they've learned to hide a little bit. But I would say a lot of adults are also. It's different now. Um, I would impress you by the job I have, or the business I own, or the car I drive. What I mean? I can do things to try and impress you, so I will feel better
Yeah.
about myself. So it's different to how obvious it was when as a teenager, but it's the same. But it is the same thing, and I think as adults, if we don't overcome these, how can we ever teach them to young people?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of parents that don't know how to help their child become bolder. So a lot of times when I'm talking to people and they're adults about boldness, part of my message is you need to help your children develop boldness because you're inhibiting it out of them by protecting them so much, and you don't know how to tell them how to become bolder, how to build their confidence. You need to help them to stop worrying about what most people think and give them insight into that and say most people are really just thinking about themselves and they don't know you. If you've got 3 or 4 people whose opinions matter to you, that's all you're going to need in life. And if everybody else, if you can discard that, I mean, you can go to them for insight and feedback and, hey, maybe I need some critique, but don't let it change you. Don't let it depress you. They could be wrong. But most of the time when people are judging you, when strangers are judging you, they are wrong about you. They're taking snapshots of who you are and deciding that they know who you are. This could be the worst day of your life. This could be the worst mood of your life. This could be the worst outfit you've ever worn. And people are deciding who you are based on that. Um, they're wrong. And I do it too. I judge people all the time. I go, I like that guy. That beard's too she should never wear that color. And they're like, and then I talk to them and I find out they're delightful people and I let that stuff go. I actually that I have an exercise. One of the things I do in the book is a lot of exercises to make you bolder. Is when I see something that I have a judgment about people. Let's say I'm in line in Starbucks and I see this woman and she's wearing all yellow. And I'm thinking, wow, that's extreme. I will deliberately compliment the thing I have a judgment about. So I'll say, but wow, that yellow looks amazing on you. And, I've done this and I had a woman say, oh, thank you so much. Cause, I was feeling so down today. I thought if I just wore a really bright color, it would start to change my day. And I so appreciate you saying that. So I totally reversed my thinking about her because why do I care what color she wears? And I lifted her up by complimenting her. So I felt better about myself because instead of judging her negatively in my head, I complimented her outwardly. And so learning to do these things changes how you approach the world and will expand your comfort zone. This is the secret that I learned because people will say, well, I would be more confident I would be bolder if I were more confident. And I say, you have it backwards. It's bold action when you're not confident that builds your confidence. Taking risks, trying stuff, embarrassing yourself, looking ridiculous, any of those things, doing something bold when you don't know how it's going to go, most of the time goes better than you thought. But even if it didn't, you tried it and you feel better about yourself because you tried it and it starts to expand your confidence. If you're not doing that, if you're relying on some sort of innate confidence as the only confidence you'll ever have, it will impair your whole life.
Well, it's back to the fitness example, the exercise example. It's like saying, well, I'll start exercising when I'm fit. Like,
Once I'm in shape, and because I'm not going to start exercising until I can bench press at least 250
I
pounds.
get that, sure, I'll be in the gym every day. But it makes perfect sense. It seems to me that at the root of boldness, and I do want to explore a little bit what your definition of boldness is, but it sounds to me like at the root of it are 2 things. One is my worry over what you're thinking about me. So, and the second thing is my unwillingness to push through my comfort zone. So I'm worried about, oh, what's Fred thinking about? Is he thinking this is the worst podcast he's ever been on? And then because that makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable, I can't be exactly. I stay within my comfort. So those 2 things really fundamental. It's like the barriers that people are bouncing off.
Yes. What The primary symptom of it is that people hesitate. They hesitate to introduce themselves to somebody. They hesitate to have a strong opinion. They hesitate to ask for feedback or give feedback or ask for a raise or ask for a better job or ask somebody to go out with them. They just hesitate. They stop themselves. And they're the ones preventing their happiness because they're trying to stay safe. And safe is not, you know, sometimes the safest path is the most dangerous in real life. In the life there's very little real danger in life, but we process psychological danger the same way as physical danger. We freeze, we retreat, we withdraw most of the time. And that's except for bold people who go, I don't know how this is going to go, but I'm going in. And because they've been rewarded for trying stuff, because many times something unexpectedly good happens. So they start to expect the unexpected. It's an interesting thing about their behavior because they go like, I'm going to go into this room. I don't know anybody, but and I may not meet anybody at all. I'm going to talk to that guy and that person and they end up discovering something else completely different. And this person says, "Oh, you got to go meet her. She does exactly what you are, looking for. She can help you with that." And all of a sudden you say, this all happened just because I said I'm going to go in and I don't know anybody. Whereas I used to be the guy that I could literally go to a party and meet nobody in the whole evening. I'm the guy looking at the record collection and the books. That used to be that guy. Now I'm the person that meets as many people as I can, but I'm more interested in going deep with at least one person. And sometimes I'm picking out the wallflower because a lot of times they're a really interesting person, but it's all kept inside. So I go up to them and I'll just start peeling them open and then maybe introducing them to 2 or 3 people, and it will change their whole month because I've done that. But I've also probably met somebody really interesting. So it's just like shifting your behavior to realize nobody's teaching us this socialization. We got to do it. We got to be the ones stopping ourselves and taking bold action. Now, you said, what's the difference, like the definition of boldness? Confidence is how you feel about yourself and how you feel in certain situations. We actually have what I call situational confidence. There's certain areas where we're completely confident. I know people that are really comfortable in groups of people. One-on-one, they got nothing. They clam right up. They can't even think of what to say. And then I know the reverse. I know people who are great one-on-one, and you put them in a room, they can't meet. Put them on stage, they can't get a whole phrase out, never mind sentence. And so we all have this situational confidence, but it's all based on how we feel. Boldness is 100% about action. What do you do? It's got nothing to do with how much confidence you have, because most of the time, if you're confident, it doesn't require any boldness to act. Boldness is about acting when you're not confident. It's the definition of risk is you don't know how it's going to go. There's no certainty for how it's going to go. It could go badly. But the whole idea, and let's bring it all the way back to the analogy of exercise. When you exercise, you deliberately aim for the final rep that you can't do. That's where all the growth happens, in the last 2 reps that you do and the third one that you can't do. You deliberately aim for failure in exercise. That's where the growth happens. Transfer that to social behavior. I'm going to deliberately fail until I don't fail anymore, as I expand my comfort zone. But the other part, and it's critical, In exercise, there's no negative consequence to failing. Nobody's going, oh, you can't come to the gym anymore. You didn't do the 14th rep. No, you're aiming for the 14th rep because there's no negative consequences. So the way you build your boldness muscle is you do bold stuff when the stakes are so low that there's no real consequence. Smile at 10 strangers a day and process the fact that half of them didn't smile back and say, there could be any number of reasons. It's not that I'm unlovable. It's that they've got bad teeth or are having a bad day, or they never smile at anybody, or they think I'm dressed strangely and they don't want to smile at me, or the last person they smiled at turned out to be a serial killer. So it doesn't matter. You do that stuff when the stakes are so low. Talk to a stranger in line at coffee, in a coffee shop. It doesn't matter if you doesn't turn into a deep friendship. There's no consequences. So you do those things that make you uncomfortable, but they're not so intense that you can't actually do them. But you're deliberately being uncomfortable and the stakes are really low. The reason you do that is so when it matters, your reflex is to speak up, to step up. You've developed some interaction skills, but you also don't hesitate. You stand up, you speak up, you try, you say yes instead of, oh, I don't know. Or I don't sing karaoke. I don't sing that well. It's like, are you listening to these people sing karaoke? Yeah. The tequila is doing all the singing, and they're having, you know what? They're having a great time and you're not. You're avoiding a great time.
But also everyone else is having a great time. And you're sitting in the bar and there's somebody up doing the karaoke and they are awful, but they're doing it in a fun way. They're having fun. They're singing a great Billy Joel song or something. And you're just enjoying it with them. I mean, the truth is we don't sit there and go, oh my God, he's not Elvis Presley. No, he's not. Do you know what I mean? He's a kind of karaoke bar. People, I think, are probably much more forgiving and understanding and appreciative than we give them credit for.
If like the karaoke is such a great example because what's entertaining is that person who totally commits to the performance despite ostensibly looking ridiculous or sounding off key and ridiculous, but they are belting it out and they're giving a performance and everybody's cheering them on, in part because they're unwilling to be embarrassed. We admire the heck out of somebody who chooses not to be embarrassed in what would embarrass. We're embarrassed for them sometimes. This is another weird human behavior, is somebody will do something really bold and we go, oh no, don't do that. And it's like, you're not doing it, they're doing it. Why are you taking this on emotionally? But we do. It's part of our tribal nature or whatever the heck is driving that. But when we see somebody who's willing to just put themselves out there, look ridiculous, and not worry about it, that person is charismatic to us because we are drawn to that person. And all they're doing is saying, I'm not going to worry about what everybody thinks. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to show them how to have real fun. I could look ridiculous, but I choose not to let that bother me because I'm having fun.
I think something key that I'm taking away from what you're saying there, and I hadn't really thought about it this way before, is that boldness is a choice. It reminds me of that book decades ago. I think it was by Susan Jeffries called "Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway." And it seems to me that boldness it is not, I'm now a bold person, so this doesn't bother me. I don't care. Bold, because as you say, if that's the case, then what you need boldness for? Boldness is when you're standing there and you are terrified to do it. But you make a choice, I'm doing this anyway. I think that's a really important distinction, because then you realize, standing in that moment, well, I need to make a choice here. I'm terrified either way. I'm nervous either way, but I need to make a choice, and I can make a choice to be bold. And what will that bring to me? Or I can make a choice to stand in the corner. And I've done that 100 times. I fucking know what that does. So, for anyone listening, I think that's a really important definition, that you have a choice to make.
Yeah. It's really just stepping up and saying yes. Somebody says, "Do you want to give this presentation, to the board?" Uh, no, no, I don't. But my whole body's saying no, but my mouth says, yeah, I'll do that." And now you have to figure out how to do it, and you may bungle it, but if you just see, bold people look at failure and bungling it and mistakes and things not going well, it merely as information on the pathway to better. Just like when you're playing a sport, you do things wrong till you do them right. You in the frenzy of the game, you kick the ball into the soccer ball into the opposing team's, into your own net instead of the opposing teams. And you could say, "I'm never going to play soccer again because I did that," or you can remember what was going on when you did that and just get better. If life is the real joy and satisfaction in life is challenging yourself to get better at something you care about. Whether it's being, there's boldness in being a really great parent. There's boldness in being a really great uncle. There's boldness in being a really great, personal assistant. Like, I'm going to be the best personal assistant this person's ever had. I'm going to make her life so easy that, that she's going to be on the cover of Forbes by the time it's over. It takes boldness to say, I can create an amazing self, because that's all you're really trying to do, is compete with yourself to get better, and not and accept failure as the stairway up. Every step up is, you learn to talk by not talking well. You learn to walk by falling down. You learn to ski by falling down. All of these things are stacking failures to gather information. So just and the only thing that keeps us from doing it socially is we don't want to feel rejected. So you have to learn to reject rejection. You have to learn to relabel rejection as somebody just doesn't know you, or it doesn't matter. When people say, "Oh, there's a whole bunch of people are going to laugh at me," I said, like, do you really need everyone to love you? That's a tall order, unlikely, first of all, and incredibly unnecessary. Um, because, you should have a few people that know you deeply and love you. And this is the other crazy thing. How many people in your life, Paul, that half the reason you love them is because of their flaws and their quirks? It's not because they're perfect. It's not because they're the ideal person. It's because they're unique. And it resonates with you in some way, and there's quirky as you in some way, or they like the same weird stuff you do, or they're so weird that you're just enjoying watching them being incredibly weird without being weird yourself. You're like, this is massively entertaining. I would never do what they're doing, but I sure like watching them do it. So it's like, there's nobody's perfect, but we're all embarrassed not to be. It's incredibly irrational, but it's this fear of being rejected by the tribe.
And that makes sense, because we all know the stories. I mean, it struck me, well, about 3 years ago, coming through the airport in Malaga in Spain. I twisted my knee, and my son literally had to carry me almost to the airplane. And when I got to Dublin, I had to get a wheelchair. And I couldn't walk for about 2 weeks until I had surgery on my knee. It was a small thing, a torn meniscus. But what struck me at the time was that this was pretty simple. I got surgery, and literally he said to me, "You'll walk out of the hospital." And I mean, it was a day procedure, which I did. In a couple of weeks, I was absolutely fine. But what struck me was, had this happened to me maybe hundreds of years earlier, my life would have been over because I was no longer independent. So I suppose we grew up in an environment where we depended on other people, and maybe we now have just taken that too far because we're in a society so that it's much more independent. We don't need everyone's approval. But when I first was looking into this thing of boldness, and again, this is my judgment of it immediately. And like, yeah, my immediate judgment was, I don't have the judgment now, but I want to talk about it a little bit. Was, where is authenticity in this? Because we come across these people that are always super confident. And then when you find out, actually, the guy's no confidence at all, actually has no self-esteem, no confidence, but looks like he's the man of the moment. And to me, authenticity is actually what connects people. So where is the line between us being authentic and honest and yet expressing our boldness? Because I suppose this show-offy boldness without any authenticity seems empty to me. So what's the
Yeah, there's a huge difference between needing attention and being a show off. That's not boldness. That's insecurity. The deepest emotion that a narcissist feels is insecurity. And so they're masking it most of the time. And most of the time it's because of a parent made them feel like nothing. And so there's two reactions to that. You crawl into your shell, or you pretend not to care about anyone. And it's all about, you know, making yourself feel good and trying to impress people. The real bold people, there's a huge level of humility that comes, and humbleness that goes with it, because we know, one, we can get better because we have gotten better, and that there's so much more to go. And what we care about is chasing our dreams and bringing as many people along as possible. We don't need for them to crown us to feel good about ourselves. We feel good about ourselves because we go to bed every day saying, boy, I took a big swing at the dream today, and almost hit it. I'm a little bit closer, and that's the satisfaction. We're trying to make a difference. We're trying to be genuinely close to people, and we're trying to bring our full self to the world. We're not stopping ourselves from revealing our true, unique self. That's authenticity. And that's where true happiness and fulfillment comes from. Is like, you know, I've reached the end of my life, and it's like, I'm exactly who I wanted to become, with all of these failures along the way, and wrong turns and stuff like that. But the number of regrets I have is nominal on my deathbed. That's what I want, because that's what people say. The the sentence people start the most when they are in the last weeks of their life is, I should have. They regret the things they didn't do. They regret not trying things, not quitting that job, not starting that business, not getting that divorce, not, pursuing that mate that they really wanted, not moving to a different country, not getting out of town, not, you know, being the parent or the best friend or the best husband, wife. Well, they regret that, and they say, "Oh, I let somebody else decide what I was capable of, and I let somebody else design my life for me based on their expectations of me."
I think what they're regretting is not having lived a true expression of themselves. And probably that's because they spent most of life worrying about what other people thought about them. And as time comes to an end, they go, "Do you know what? To hell with that. I should have just I
Yeah.
should have just lived the life that I really want to live." And I suppose the the, the boldness is that choice to go, "This is who I am," and some people will think it's ridiculous, and some people will love me for it. And it's just who I am either way. And I'm gonna step through the fear and just step up and and do what I want. I can imagine that a lot of people towards the end of their days wish they had been bolder.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's been studies done, there's been interviews done on people in their last few days and few hours, and that's what they reflect on. Um, and you know, and also I know older people that say, you know what, my life is so good, I don't care what people think anymore. I went, that's great, except you're 70. Wouldn't it have been great to behave that way in your 20s? How wonderful would your life be? And that's my mission is wherever you are right now, I want you to start seizing the moments in life and expanding your capabilities and being uncomfortable and taking bold moves, even though they could go completely wrong. You start a business that you've always wanted to start. You know, my ex-wife always wanted to start a restaurant, and she finally did. It went really badly. Like it's the odds are that's what it's going to do. But you know what? She's fine. When she walked away with it, she went, I tried to run a restaurant. Now I don't, I've checked the box. I don't need a successful restaurant. And she may go back in a few years and try another one, but she went like, I've burned up this urge. I've chased this dream and I realize I don't like it, which is great thing to know. Otherwise, you're on your last days. I really wish I had run a restaurant. I really wanted to feed people great food, but I never did.
The reality is the most. I mean, I work with a lot of successful founders and CEOs, and the reality of it is that every CEO I've ever spoken to has a series of failures. That's it. And I sometimes think the difference between the people who succeeded and the people who didn't is that they failed, they learned, they get up again, and they just simply kept going. Um, the subtitle of your book is From Underconfident to Charismatic in 90 Days. So, um, is there a series of processes you're taking people through?
Yes.
Big claim. I was. I mean, I consider myself.
Fairly bold claim, isn't it, Paul? I'd be kind of embarrassing if
Yeah, I'm embarrassed for you. You maybe should put in your might if you like.
yeah, possibly. I don't know. Right. You might be different.
Yeah, I might be completely wrong about this. So, what's a, so what sort of processes? I mean, what still stuck in my mind is your story about in the coffee shop, and the lady in the yellow dress or whatever. And kind of what struck me about that was because you could stand there and go and judge her, as you say, um, or you can say something. But when you say something, the whole thing shifts because now you actually go, now you understand her motive for wearing your very loud dress, and you go, bloody fair play to you. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
touch it on. So I can see, I mean, and that to me, I'm going, well, that was a simple process to go next time I'm standing in a coffee and I'll say hello to someone. I mean, these aren't monumental requests of someone, but they could shift perspective. So is there a series of exercises and work you take people through, or how does that work?
Yes. So I start very simply. Now it's based on the principles of how improv comedy is taught. Because a lot of people go, how does somebody walk on stage, take a suggestion, and create a scene out of nothing?
Yeah.
Like they don't start that way. That's how. They start improv comedy training starts non-verbally, and it gradually works up to building, like, it's got rules in it, that you start to apply, and then all of a sudden, you realize you trust yourself on stage to come up with something, and all the anxiety goes away, and it all turns into energy, and your brain just like, now you go into flow state. Now you go into creativity rather than anxious shutdown. And once that shift happens, everything changes. Like, I studied improv comedy for years, and it changed how I approached everything in my life. But I've created exercises that start non-verbally. Smile at 10 strangers a day. Work your way up to saying hi. What start where you are. If it makes you anxious to smile at 10 people, smile at 3. If that's too many, smile at 1 a day, but try to get to it every day, because your brain says, we're trying something new, and it starts to help. But what will happen is the positive feedback loop will start to happen, because if you start complimenting strangers, you suddenly realize, wow, I can converse with a complete stranger. I could never do that. I talk to people everywhere, in an elevator. Well, and first thing I bring up is, like, I know there's a rule that we're not supposed to speak. However, uh, and just,
You just get positive, basically.
yeah, you get good at it by not being good at it. That's how, accept that you're going to suck at something when you start, because whatever it is, you're going to suck at it. You're not going to become a master chef because you just bought groceries. You know, it's expect to bumble your way up. And so it goes all the way. I have people going in, like, one of the people love this when I say, if you see a sign on a door that says employees only, go in. Nothing bad will happen. But in your head, there'll be all these things. Oh, I can't go in there. Somebody's going to say so. It's like, most of the time, nobody will say anything. I've done this so many times. Nobody says anything, because the only thing was the sign keeping you out. The most is they're going to say, if this has happened, is somebody will say, oh, excuse me, this is for employees only. And I'll say, well, I am an employee, just not here. And they look at me like I'm an idiot, but I'm being an idiot. I am. Nobody's going to beat me to death. Nobody's going to arrest me.
You can leave.
Just that I leave. I am aiming for failure. I am trying to get thrown out.
You're training yourself.
I'm doing, with no consequences, I am doing a boldness exercise. So that's what I teach people to build, controlling the dosage on the way up, but expanding their comfort zone when the stakes are low. So when the stakes are high, they step up, they say yes, they take the risk.
You can build that muscle, and now it's a response. Because I get that if you're unwilling to say hello to someone in an elevator, or you're unwilling to smile at the person serving you coffee or something, how is it you expect when you're in the boardroom or in front of a client or with your boss? How is it you expect to to step up? So people don't need to be fearful of your work and your book. They can buy it and go, first thing I do is just got to smile. So I love that. There's that, there really is so much in this, and it sounds like something so simple, but what I'm hearing is there's actually so much in this. Where can people find you? Where can they find the book?
So the book is on Amazon, and it's hardcover and Kindle, and the audiobook as well. It's on Audible, and it's me reading the book. So I know people like that. So I always tell them that it's
Yeah.
me. Yeah. And my website, they can go to my website, uh, and they can actually take a boldness quiz to see where they're at. It's aimed primarily at salespeople, but it kind of evaluates everybody. Um, and I do a lot of public speaking. So either maybe you want me to come into your company and fire up your team. uh, or maybe you just want a conversation with me. You can schedule 30 minutes with me on my website.
Cool. Excellent. Well, Fred, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I certainly have takeaways from this conversation myself that I'm going to start practicing when this switches off. It's been an absolute pleasure, Fred. Thank you so much. I will stick links to your website, etc., in the show notes, and certainly, I think the book is going to be a great read for people, and I would encourage them to jump onto Amazon together. Fred, thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Paul. This has been really fun.